Data visualization. This is one of the most important steps of the data analytics pipeline. Numbers tell a story, data tells a story, but visualization brings that story to life. Imagine you are presenting a report and all you do is reading a bunch of numbers. That would be pretty boring, right? Data visualization helps you turn things around. Hi everyone, this is Dr. Humaira and I'm your data and AI mentor. In this tutorial, we are going to focus on data visualization techniques. Data visualization is important for a number of reasons. But I want to present to you two and later on a third one, very important reason why you should never ignore data visualization. First, data visualization helps you uncover patterns that you might miss out when you are just looking at the data in the form of a spreadsheet, tables, rows, and columns. Imagine looking at a line chart and being able to see right away where the dips are, where the spikes are, and then proceeding forward to uncover the reasons behind them. This is difficult to identify when you just have numbers on a table. The second reason is when you communicate with your stakeholders, they are not necessarily technical people. You will have stakeholders who belong to the marketing team, the product team, finance, and so on and so forth. Definitely not data experts. And when you communicate with your stakeholders, you need to talk in their language. That's the only way how you can create impact. That's the only way how you can influence them or inspire them to take up your findings and your suggestions. Again, data visualization is the common language that you can speak here. And the third pro tip, and this is especially true if you are new to data analysis and if you are trying to build up your portfolio, if you are trying to establish yourself as the data expert, then data visualization is your shortcut. As a data analyst, you should create a compelling portfolio which you can use to showcase your skills as a data analyst. And again, data visualization is the best way to do that. There are many visualization and charting techniques that you can employ for your data analysis. For example, in order to have a time series forecasting, you can use line charts. Or when there are categories that you want to compare, you can use bar chart or column charts. If you want to have geographical information, you can use geomaps, and so on and so forth. But a note of caution, just because a graph looks complicated is not the reason to use it. You need to make sure that number one, you are using the right style of chart to represent the right kind of data. And number two, your graphs make sense. Remember, always remember that you are doing all this exercise so that you can create a business impact. And in order to show that business impact, the audience need to understand that. If your charts are unnecessarily complicated, your audience is not going to understand them, and that's not going to leave you in a good light. So always remember, the charts that you implement, the charts that you create, they should always be relevant and clear. So let's get our hands dirty now and do some visualization on our Amazon sales data. As usual, we need to keep our business question in mind. So far, we were focusing on our customer satisfaction. We were looking at the ratings, we were looking at their comments, and we were trying to explore throughout during our exploratory data analysis, the EDA, that which categories have which kind of ratings. We also tried to uncover what are the major concerns or what are the major problems highlighted by our customers in case the ratings were low. Now let's try to bundle everything together and develop some visualizations. Let's try to first create a visualization for ratings per category. So we go back to our ratings per category table. And here, if you recall from the previous module, we developed a table where we had categories as one of the columns and the average rating for all of these categories. The charts that we can create here can be inserted by going to Insert and then clicking on Chart. For that, we need to first select the data that you want to create a chart for, and then you go to Insert and Create Chart. As part of Google Sheets intelligence, it suggests which kind of chart should be created. Here it is suggesting to create a histogram. We will come to the histogram in a bit, but let's see what other charts can we create. Let's say we create a line chart, and this is fairly good representation. We can see that for a few categories, we have a rating which is low, and then the rating keeps on increasing for the rest of the categories. However, this is not a time series data. It's not like previously the value were lower and now the values are higher. So you see an upward trend which makes a difference. Here, representing this as a line chart is not giving us much information. On the other hand side, let's see what other charts we can create, perhaps a column chart. So you can insert a column chart. So whenever we want to compare different categories, column charts make more sense. And this is actually a much more representative chart when we want to see how the ratings of different categories look like. This chart technically is totally correct, but it doesn't make so much sense because the data is so huge. So what would be a better chart here would be that instead of looking at the categories all together as a whole, so for example, if we are looking at home and kitchen, then we are looking at kitchen and home appliances, all up to electric grinders, and then another one, computer and accessories as dust covers, and so on and so forth. It would make so much more sense if we are looking at this data in a more granular form. So how about instead of using all these categories, we only look at the first category, the major category. So we don't need this chart. We can just put it at the side. Maybe we will use it later on. But let's do something. Let's try to extract from each. Let me increase the size of the screen, and I hope that makes it more clear. So let's go back, and we want to, let's say, extract home and kitchen, computer and accessories, electronics, again, home and kitchen, from all these data points. For this, you can use one of the functions of Google Sheet or Excel called a split. Split is used as the following. You start with an equal to and type the function split, and you can autocomplete this. Split comprises of two parameters. The first parameter is what do you want to split? So I want to split this cell. And the second parameter, which you can put after the comma, is according to what criteria do you want to split. And here, if you notice that the category and subcategories are partitioned with a pipe. So you can, in quotation marks, specify that wherever there is a pipe, split this cell. So if I close the bracket and hit enter, then you can see that all these categories are now separate out. So home and kitchen, kitchen and home appliances, then coffee, tea and espresso, coffee grinders and electric grinders. So these are all the subcategories which are now separate. All we have to do now is to copy or drag this formula down there, and it will apply the same thing for all the cells. So we have copied this till the end, 212 rows. And now we can see that for each of these rows, we have the first category in the first cell or column, and then these are subcategories. So you can actually call this as main category. And then this is subcategory. You can call this subcategory 1, subcategory 2, subcategory 3, or you can leave it unnamed as well if you don't need it. So on and so forth. Now, as a next step, we want to repeat what we have done before. So for this main category, we want to count how many times home and kitchen is appearing, what is the average rating for only home and kitchen. For computers and accessories, what is the average rating for only this category? Do you recall what would be the tool that you will use here? If you said pivot table, you are right. So let's go back and use the same process that you use for creating a pivot table, but this time we will create a pivot table for these two columns. You remember the process, right? You select the sheet and then you can go to insert and then pivot table. It asks you where to create the pivot table. And as I said before, it's a good idea to create it in a new sheet. And let's rename this as ratings per home category or main category, whatever you want to call it. What do we want as rows? For this, I want to recall what was the question. The question was, for each of the home category, for each of the main category, what is the average rating? So what's the main variable that we are going to use here? The first is the home category and the second is average rating. So let's do that. Here in rows, you will add main category. So all the main categories are now mentioned here. And what do we want as values? In values, we would like to have the average rating. Do we want to have a sum of all the average ratings? No, we want to have the average of average ratings. And here we have all those numbers. And again, it's a good idea to copy this data and bring it back to a sheet. So take it out of the pivot table. You can actually create a table here. It's a good idea to give it a header as well. So I'll pull this one step down. And here I'll call this as home category. And here is the average rating. So just to recall, what we have done here is that what we had here was average rating for this subcategory. And now, so for example, electric grinders will have a separate average rating, and another one from home and kitchen, for example, halogen heaters, they have another rating. But now what we are doing is we have discarded all the subcategories. Now this and this and this parameter, since it all belongs to home and kitchen, it all is bundled up in one. And this makes much more sense because now we have only, you can count how many items are these. These are 9 items. And you can see that this 9 items are much more easier to represent as compared to the 200 plus items that we had. And this is also very important. You need to decide what information you want to present. Does it make sense to present all the information of all the subcategories, or is it much better to combine all the information and merge information so that we have less number of bigger chunks? Let's see if we create a visualization here, how would that look like? For that, we selected the data, and just like before, we go to insert and insert a chart. And here we see a column chart which was suggested, and this makes so much more sense that here we can see that we have certain categories which are lesser, certain categories which have a higher rating, and it would make so much more sense if we can sort this data. So you can go back, select the data, go to data, sort range, go to advanced range sorting options. Data has a header row, and we want to sort according to the average rating, let's say in descending order. So highest comes first and then we go lower. And here you can easily see that the office products have the highest rating, which is 4.2 or 3 maybe. And then toys and games, home improvement, and then car and motorbike is the one with least rating. And you can also check how much is this. It's 3.8. And the highest one is 4.3. And now you can make a decision if you are happy with this rating or if you want to improve the rating. And the same question comes back. You can make further decisions on the basis of this visual, and you can also get further insights. One thing which you may have noticed is we are moving back and forth between the different phases. So we were in the visualization phase, but we went back and we did further analysis. If you also recall, in the previous modules as well, we went back sometimes and did more cleaning, which was one of the first steps that we did. So it's very normal to go back and forth between the different phases. It's much better to start with a main chunk of that step to be done first, like data preparation, before you go to statistical analysis and before you go to the exploratory data analysis. But in case at one of the later stages you find out that something needs to be fixed in the previous stage, then it's a continuous loop. You go back to the previous stage, fix that, get more information, and come back, just like we did here. Another chart which is very important, which by the way you saw a glimpse of, is the histogram. So whenever, for example, you want to see how is the data distributed. So for example, if you want to notice, going back to your ratings, if you want to see how your ratings are distributed, are there more 3s, are there more 4s, are there more 2s? In that case, you can actually create a histogram of your data. So let's see if we use the bigger category, how would the histogram look like? For this, again, as before, select the data and then go to Insert, Chart. We are not looking for a column chart, rather, we are looking for a histogram. So for that, you can scroll below and create this one. So what this does is this will identify the different buckets. So how many data points are coming between 3 to 3.4 or 3.3 to 3.4 or between 3.4 to 3.5. We can see here that most of the data is occurring between the rating 4 and 4.4. And this is called typically a normal distribution, that there is a certain category which is the most popular one, and then there are some extreme categories which are there, but we don't have that many data points. So for example, in the case of averaging, we don't even see any 2s as an average. So everything is basically being normalized. And of course, if you would have found a lot of data points within the left side of the curve, across the lower area of the curve, then this would have been a left skewed data distribution. And this would have been very concerning because it would have meant that there were many ratings which are on the lower spectrum. On the other hand side, if most of the ratings were on the right side, this would be a right skewed data distribution. Then we would be super happy because then most of the ratings are getting a high average. But that's also not very normal. The normal distribution is that you have some distributions which are most popular, then there are some data points which are less than the average, and then there are some which are more than the average. And this is a very normal and a balanced curve. There are a number of visualizations that you can do on your raw data as well. So for example, if we go back to our Amazon home data set, we can see if there is any link between the discount percentage and rating. If you recall, we spoke about this in one of the earlier sessions as well, that do we have any evidence that the ratings for products which have low discount is low and the ratings for products which have a high discount are high. So if you want to visualize such and information, you can use something called as scatter plot. For this, again, like before, you select the data which you want to include in the visualization, and then you go back to insert and insert a chart. And by default, Google is suggesting to use a scatter chart. And here is how it looks like. It looks like that even companies or brands or products which are not offering any discount, up till a company which is offering a very huge discount, 80 to 90%, the ratings are overall distributed, which means that for companies who are offering only 0% discount, they are also getting very high ratings, and they also are getting low ratings, but low means 3 point something. On the other hand side, there are companies which are, or products which have a huge amount of discount, but you still see a variation over there. Also, these points which seem like outlier, they are not part of the regular population. You can see that they are also for a product range which is between 40 to 60%, or something which is very high, that's also in the same range. So you can see that for the same range, 40 to 60%, there are some products which are not doing that great. There are some which are doing very good, but most of them are all over. And this is actually showing us the correlation between the variables discount percentage and rating. And we are able to see that there is actually no correlation, or a very weak correlation. In fact, to the point of no correlation. If we would have seen a trend like something which is increasing over the category, or something which is decreasing over the category, if our scatter plots would have looked like a slanted line with a slope, then it would have meant that there is a strong correlation between the two variables. So this confirms that these two variables, the percentage, discount percentage, and rating, does not have any correlation. I want to take a minute to go back and explore what other charting mechanisms are there as well. So for example, in here we have, in addition to scatter chart, a line chart as well. We saw how to create one. If you want to have a smooth line chart, you can pick here. And column chart we have seen as well. And if you want to combine your line chart with a column chart, you can use a combo chart as well. Then we have some charts where we can check the area under the curve. And for column charts, we have stack charts as well. Then there are some bar charts. Bar charts are just like column charts, but they are, instead of vertical columns, we have horizontal bars. So we can, in fact, go back to our ratings per category table. And if we want, we can try and see if we can convert this chart into a bar chart, or let's say we create a new chart which is a bar chart instead of a column chart. So we select the data and we insert chart, and instead of a column chart, we can make it a bar chart. And this is now up to you to decide if this chart makes more sense when it comes to visualization. Is it easier to read and understand, or is the other one, the column chart, was easier to read and understand? So we need to find our column chart where which is hidden somewhere. So let me try to find that. It's hidden right behind this one. So we can see if we place these two charts side by side, this one, the bar chart, actually looks more clear to read. First of all, we can read all the titles very easily, and compared to here, first of all, they are slanted, which you can change, by the way, but they are truncated as well. So reading this over here makes much more sense. And for some reason, the impact of these lines in a bar is higher than looking at these. When we look at this in a horizontal form, somehow the descending values is more prominent than the descent that's happening here. So again, the data is exactly the same The thought process is exactly the same, the information shared is exactly the same, but by looking at the clarity of impact that it's making, the clarity and impact that it's creating, I would actually go for a bar chart in this case instead of the column chart. And now that we are talking about bar and column charts, there is another chart which is the pie chart, which is also used to represent the distribution within categories. So for the same two columns, we can also insert a third chart. And this time, instead of the column chart, we pick up the pie chart. And here we can see how the different categories are distributed. But in a single glance, we can see that yes, it looks colorful and beautiful and complicated, but it is not telling us much. So we can see that our data, how is it distributed? But since the difference between the minimum rating and maximum rating is so similar, that you basically see all the categories with equal distribution. This would make much more sense if we have a parameter which has huge differences between the categories. Let's see if we can apply this chart to any other parameters and get more information. You can simply delete this chart by clicking on the three buttons and delete chart. Let's go back to our main data set and see if we can. Again, we don't need both of these charts. One of them is enough. So I delete one of them, keep the second. And then here we can see if it makes sense to do more pie charts here. It doesn't look like any other parameter that we can use for making a pie chart. And it, of course, doesn't make sense to make a chart just for the sake of it. But going back, what are the other charts that we can develop? And if I go here, I can see that we have checked the scatter plot. There are maps available as well. So if your data has geo information, if your data has geographic information, then you can actually insert geo charts as well. So let's try to do that. But if you notice, we by default do not have any geolocation based data in our data set. But for the sake of an example, I actually managed to get the country names of each of these entries. So let me bring those country names from another file to this one. So what I have here is, what I will do is I'll insert one column on the left. And now on my computer, I will open up the file where I have this list of countries which were basically associated with each of these data points. And now I am copying those elements from my file and I will paste them here. Just for you to know again, this is a hypothetically created data, but this is to show you, let's say we have this country information along with our data points. So now let's see, let's say we want to see that for all these ratings or all these customers, from where were they originating, who made these ratings. So let's see if we can find some relation between country and ratings. Again, you can do some more exploratory data analysis here, and you can identify a pivot table and do some summation, some aggregation. But right now we are more interested in developing a geo map between the country and the rating, and we want to see if there is any specific country where the ratings are very good or any specific country where the ratings are not very good. So how do we proceed? We select the two columns for which we want to insert the chart. So we have selected the country and we have selected the rating. And now, as usual, we go to insert and insert a chart. By default, it gives us a column chart, which it's not very representative, but we can still see that there are a few countries like, I don't know, Thailand or Poland, for which we have very high values. So these countries are giving very high ratings. And then, yes, it's difficult to see from this column chart which country is giving the maximum or which country is giving the minimum ratings. Yes, if we can sort this data back into an ascending or descending order, then we will be able to see that. But we are not interested in a column chart right now. We are more interested in creating a map. So you go there and click a map, and ta-da, this is interesting. So we can see that now we have a geo map. Let me increase the size for it. And now we are able to see that in this geo map, the countries which have rated lower are more represented in a red color. Then the red gets dimmer, and then there is a little bit of gray for value 3 or 4, 3.5. And then as ratings increase, the dark green shows 5. So if we start with very happy countries like 5, we can see that this Peru has an average rating of 4.7. Mexico is 4.8. Another very dark country is Saudi Arabia, where we have an average rating of 5. Pakistan is quite high, 4.6, and so on and so forth. On the other end of the spectrum, the darkest that I see here is, oh wow, it's Germany. So Germany is giving the minimum rating of 2, and you can see here that 2 is appearing on the leftmost side on the scale, and you are getting dark red. And if we look at the other reds, then Colombia has a rating 3, and this is where you see it is through the arrow on the legend. You see where it lies on the scale. And next one is Canada, which is 3.2, and so on and so forth. So this is a very nice way to again see and get insights that, okay, the customers who are giving a bad rating or unhappy customers, where do they belong? So it means that for these 3 countries, you need to have a very different strategy of marketing, sales, relationship management, quality assurance compared to the others. Because these are either whatever, the problem with the product, or the people are more critical, but then they give negative reviews. On the other hand side, the countries which are very satisfied, you may want to do a different kind of strategy there. And the countries which are more in the middle, you may want to have a different kind of strategy there. But this actually gives you, in addition to now we have seen that which categories were doing good or bad, now we also see which countries are more critical versus more happy and satisfied. I want to conclude by showing you one more chart, which you may have noticed that this chart can also take another form. You can edit the chart, and instead of a geo chart in this form, you can also have a geo chart with markers. And if you use this, then basically you, instead of the whole map being converted into a gradient scale, you can also see circles or markers. And here the size of the circle and the color of the circle both are representing some information. So for example, if we look at this darkest circle, which is actually again Germany, you can also see by darkness, you can see the value of the rating, and by the size you can also see how many ratings were there which were used to create this value. So for example, as you can see, the size of this circle is smaller, so it means that the twos are actually less in number, and compared to any green that you see next to it, for example this one, it's much bigger in number, and this shows that there were more ratings that were used to calculate this. And now just like before, you can decide if you want to keep this in this form with markers, or if you prefer to show it in this way using a gradient style, you can pick and choose. This was all about data visualization. And in the next module, we will look at how we can use these visuals to convert them into a compelling business story. Stay tuned.